An overwhelming majority of Americans do not believe Ukraine bears more responsibility for the war Russia launched against it, according to a Reuters/Ipsos poll conducted on March the 3rd to the 4th. 70% of respondents said they do not hold Ukraine more accountable for the war, while only 7% expressed the opposite view. Meanwhile, 23% either did not know or chose not to answer the question of whether Ukraine was more to blame for the war. Political affiliation played a role in the responses. 81% of Democrats said Ukraine was not more responsible for the war. 62% of Republicans agreed with this stance. 11% of Republicans said they believe Ukraine holds greater responsibility for the war. The survey also revealed a sharp divide on another issue: whether the United States should receive a share of Ukraine's natural resources in exchange for military aid, an idea repeatedly floated by US President Donald Trump. Earlier, Harvard Capps/Harris poll revealed that the US voters support Ukraine negotiating with Russia but oppose territorial concessions and want US security guarantees. The poll reveals strong opposition to excluding Ukraine's leadership from the negotiation process, with 59% of voters opposed to the Trump administration leaving Ukraine's leaders out. Additionally, 55% of voters oppose the exclusion of European leaders in such talks. The issue of territorial concessions was another point of contention. A majority, 57% of voters, are opposed to pressuring Ukraine to make territorial concessions to end the war. The poll also indicates widespread concern about the potential for further Russian expansion. A significant 63% of voters believe that Russia will continue to advance into other countries if it successfully claims Ukrainian territory. Earlier, Russian leader Vladimir Putin indicated a willingness to cooperate with the United States on mineral trade, including resources from temporarily occupied territories. Almost half of US citizens disapprove of President Donald Trump's approach to ending the war in Ukraine. This is evidenced by the results of a survey by Economist-YouGov. It is noted that slightly less, 40% of Americans responded that they support Trump's methods for ending the war in Ukraine. At the same time, 21% of respondents fully approve of his actions in this direction, while 36% of Americans categorically disapprove of the US president's methods. According to the authors, the key reason for this position of US citizens is how Trump talks about the war, an approach that Americans clearly disagree with. Recall as President Trump addressed a joint session of Congress at the US Capitol, the longest first speech the US chamber has seen since 1964, the reaction was mixed. Republican Al Green, a Texas Democrat, was removed for heckling, while some attendees held up signs reading "false" and "lies." Besides, everyday citizens face in marshalling a tangible response to Trump and the swift, sweeping actions of his second administration. Protesters have so many things to push back against, from tariffs to Trump's reset on the war in Ukraine, to the aggressive and sometimes legally dubious actions of the Department of Government Efficiency and its leader, billionaire Elon Musk, that it's hard to know what to focus on. For example, in Atlanta, where hundreds of people marching and chanting about a range of Trump initiatives. Trump was called a fascist, a Russian asset, Putin's puppet, and wannabe king, among other more profane monikers. One sign implored "Punch Nazis," reflecting an increasingly common effort to compare Trump's presidency to Nazi Germany. Musk was a frequent target of mockery and ire.
European Union leaders are holding emergency summit talks to beef up their own military defenses and make sure Ukraine will still be properly protected as Europe faces the prospect of the US cutting it adrift. According to Associated Press, Friedrich Merz, the likely next Chancellor of Germany, and Summit Chair Antonio Costa discussed ways to fortify Europe's defenses on a short deadline on Thursday. Meanwhile, the 27-nation bloc was waking up to the news that French President Emmanuel Macron would confer with his EU counterparts about the possibility to use France's nuclear deterrent to protect the continent from Russian threats.
The new Prime Minister of Belgium.
Thank you.
Madam President.